Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. And today we're going to go with the sports page, and that means Bob Case is going to be with us today. And Bob has a special friend of his that if you're an old-time baseball fan, and if you've got a couple of gray hairs like me, or if you're losing your hair like Bob, you're going to remember the name Sam McDowell, one of the greatest pitchers, and what an interesting story. The baseball phenom that could throw over 100 miles an hour and did so frequently. Strikeout guy, but also a walk leader. We're going to talk about that. But then how his life has pivoted and changed for the better. There's been a series of ups and downs, of struggles and triumphs, and we're going to talk to Sam about that. But one of your dear friends, Bob, and a guy that you've known probably since the very early 1960s, a man that you respect dearly, that you love dearly and appreciate for all that he's been through, and a lot of that because you've done it together. This isn't just somebody that you heard of or whatever. That you're friends. You guys have been acquainted for such a long time. So I'm going to be a special guest getting to listen to the two of you talk about some things, but we're going to also get into the depths of Sam McDowell, his life, and some of the pivoting elements that are a part of it. But Bob, please tell us a little bit in terms of your background with Sam McDowell and how you first met and what an influence he's had on your life.
Yeah, thanks, Harper. And it's a real honor to be with both of you guys. And all I can say is this is kind of like an emotional thing for me, because the guy you're looking at there, Sam, there wouldn't be a Bob Case sports page that I would never know Harper. I would have never lived to be 48 years old, or if it wasn't for this man right here. He actually saved my life, and he's not only saved my life, he saved thousands of lives, the ones he doesn't even know about. So I met Sam in 1962 in spring training. He was this hot bonus boy, rookie, hot shot. I was attracted to him right away because I thought he was cool because he had long sideburns like Elvis Presley, and major league players did not have long sideburns back then. They didn't have him. You know, he was the only guy that had him. So I kind of liked that he had a little bit of rebel in him. And, we stayed at the Riviera Hotel in Palm Springs. And the Angels, when I was working for the Angels, we saw in spring training the Cleveland Indians, the Boston Red Sox, the San Francisco Giants, and the Cubs, but more so the Cleveland Indians then. So I got, Sam and I would go out. At the Riviera Hotel, I remember I was like 17 years old. And I looked like I was 25, so I could drink and stay out all night and everything. And we had some great times in spring training. And that was the beginning of a friendship that's lasted my whole life,
What's interesting too, Bob, is that you said you're 17. Well, guess what? Sam was about the same age as a young kid. He's just out of high school.
Yeah, when I met Sam, he was like 3 years older than me. But, so I thought he was like a man, like I looked up to him. He graduated from high school in 1960, and I graduated in 63. But, I just thought he was a cool guy. He was 6'5", good-looking guy, dressed to the nines. All the chicks liked him. I said, this is how, when I was a kid, I didn't want to be like Mickey Mantle or Roger Maris or, Al Kaline. This is the guy I want. This guy had everything I wanted, man. He could drink. He stayed out all night. He was fun. He was, I say today, Sam is a serious human being, but he wasn't serious back then. We were laughing, having fun, doing crazy stuff. And it's like a complete reversal of a human being that I've witnessed. But let's forget about that. He has been my go-to guy for 41 years. If I ever had a serious issue, any problem, even though he's on the other side of the United States, Sam's my guy. And, just sort of, I'm going to give you one example, and then we're going to go hear Sam talk. But the ball players that I know, and how about world figures, which we won't name, but world leaders who's changed their lives, okay? And, he was with the Texas Rangers, the Toronto Blue Jays, helping all these people. I mean, and, his legacy, if they gave a Hall of Fame, they had a Hall of Fame for saving lives, he would be a first ballot, believe me. And that's all I can tell you. For example, there's a woman in Malibu that Sam met. Her name is Kristen Jamin. She was coming off a 10-year drug addiction. And Sam gently told her she couldn't sleep. She was thinking about going back out because she couldn't sleep, and she was Sam was like a clinical psychologist. I mean, he knows all the, he took classes and graduated from different schools. He told her this will leave. And when he put his hand on her hand and said, Kristen, this will leave. This will go away. And God, she's been 10 years sober today. She's loved it all over Malibu, and it's because of this man. And I've seen him do it with tons of other people. I could name ball players. It'd be like a who's who in baseball, but I'm not going to do that because it's an anonymous program. But, it's some of them have come out publicly. Bernie Carbo has said, Sam McDowell saved my life. A lot of them have come out publicly. Steve Howe. Sam had me taking Steve Howe to meetings. And
one of the interesting things you brought up was Bernie Carbo. And in his case, he was in the middle of committing suicide.
That's right. Absolutely. But I mean, it just goes on and on. But I could talk about Sam's baseball life forever. The different stories, the things I saw. I'm going to tell you one story. They're playing the Giants, and this is when he was drinking heavily and everything. He wasn't the same Sam as 1970. They're playing the Giants in Dodger Stadium, and Sam won the game 10-8. Okay, but I'll never forget. Willie Davis came to bat with a couple of guys on base. Sam threw one of those 100-mile-an-hour fastballs right by the back of his head, and Davis flew up like this, fell on the ground, and I'll never. And we went out that night afterward, the night watch. And Willie Davis got up. He was shaking so much, the next pitch he popped up, he couldn't even hold the bat. I'll never forget that as long as I live.
Sam, I would imagine, and we're going to talk baseball, but before we do, would it be fair to say that there are a lot of folks that are looking for answers? They don't know why. They don't know how it's taking over, but there are some issues. They're hurting. They want assistance. They need some help. And I would imagine your ability to be able to provide not only an answer, but the right answer for them and what they need at that time, that might be a bit of a lead-in for you to be able to open the door to help people turn their lives around and to get control back. Is there any truth in that?
Somewhat. But initially, when I got into counseling, I used to refer people to other professionals because I didn't think I had all the answers, which being an alcoholic, you have an obsessive compulsive nature to you in the beginning, and it stays with you. And my compulsion was education after my recovery. And so I continually went back to school. There wasn't any specific college that had a 6-year program that, like they do today, where I could get a doctorate or what have you. I had to go to different colleges. I went to Pitt, did coursework there, to Duquesne University, to University of San Diego Medical School, to Harvard Medical School correspondence courses. Over 40 workshops that lasted some 3 days, some 2 weeks, all over the country to try and understand what's going on and how we can help. Because back in the day when I started, there wasn't any research in alcoholism and addiction. It was all theoretical, or they thought it was a psychological or emotional problem.
Right.
Or a character flaw and what have you. And once in 1970, when a researcher in Houston found certain chemicals in an alcoholic brain that are not in anybody else's brain, it started a flurry of research that is still going on today. In fact, I would venture to say that probably within the next 10 to 15 years, there will actually be a cure for alcoholism in the sense of the physical withdrawal and demand with the human body. However, one of the problems that they're going to have is that an individual still is going to have to alter the thinking pattern that he's born with because it's a genetic disease. And so even if they come up with a pill or a shot, to help the alcoholic, he's still going to need psychotherapy in one form or another. And the greatest and free program is called the 12-step program, and that hasn't changed, and it's not going to change in the near future. It is amazing what those individuals in the beginning, Bill and Bob, one insurance man and one a medical doctor, actually came up with, and they themselves have said it wasn't necessarily their thinking. And that is information that they believe came to them from God, because nobody knew what they were talking about, and they didn't. But they designed a program that to this day is by far the greatest recovery program in the world. Uh, and nothing can come close or match it, even with, and I have to say, California is probably the seed of the greatest idiotic programs that you ever saw. And every year they come up with 2 or 3 more fancy programs just to patronize the alcoholic and to make money off of them. And they end up going back to the same old program for real recovery. And that's what I had to learn and what I did learn. And what Bob has become an expert at too.
And I would imagine also there's more to it. You mentioned there's a shot or a pill or maybe even a patch that might be in the horizons for healing, but also there's got to be that you mentioned the mental aspect of it and the commitment for somebody to just say no. That has to be strong as well. Is that a part of it for you as well?
Yeah. Well, if I may, I don't want to get too scientific on you, but the Carnegie Mellon Medical Research Center, a couple of years ago, they shocked themselves because they were doing research on the human brain and trying to see if there was any way that they could alter certain mental disorders and so on by stimulating certain parts of the brain and so on. And they had found out that with the alcoholic, that his brain was totally different in a way than a normal person's throughout his entire life. And it was the frontal lobe part of it that does all of our decision making, our thinking, knowing right from wrong, feeling pain, feeling pleasure, and so on. They found out that our frontal lobe in an alcoholic is semi asleep most of our life. And that's why we do so crazy things and strange things, and we lose sense of reality very easy. And then they find out that if there was a way of awakening that, now in a 12-step program, this same thing occurs between 16 and 18 months if a person goes through the actual recovery process where they totally change the thought process because they wake up their frontal lobe to 100% activity, where it totally changes the person from being an animal into a very sensitive, very intelligent human being, very caring one. And this is the area that used to surprise medical doctors in the field of addiction over and over and over on what is that phenomenon that occurs somewhere between 16 and 18 months of recovery. And that's what it is. And it's just amazing.
There's a lot there, the science, the art, and everything in between, isn't it, Bob? And excuse me, Sam, you've learned so much of it. We'll discuss a little bit more of that later, if you don't mind. Let's first go and just take a look, if you don't mind. Can we, let's talk a little bit of baseball. When you first started playing, I would imagine as a little Weezer, 5, 6, 7 years old, brothers, friends down the street, was it guys from school? When did you know that you had whatever it is in terms of baseball player? My arm's a little bit stronger than everybody else. I like throwing a little bit more than everybody else. Was there an aspect of that happened with you early on in your life?
Actually not. I didn't come to that realization probably until my 4th or 5th year in the major leagues.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I was in that alcoholic fog that they call it, where you're not really sensitive and aware of everything that's going on because you're basically in a sense of escapism. And I just was having fun. I enjoyed baseball, just having a lifetime. As Bob knows, all I wanted was to have fun, to enjoy life, to have a great time, because it's very difficult for an alcoholic to realize reality and the true sense of happiness and so on. We seek it artificially every way we possibly can. And so when I was 7 years old or 8 years old or 9 years old, uh, I just enjoyed everything like my brothers. Now, I had four brothers, and they were all exceptional athletes. I had a brother, my older brother, who to me was a far better pitcher than I was. In his senior year, he had all kinds of scholarships offered to him for football and baseball, and he comes down with polio, where it paralyzes his right side of his body, and that ended everything for him in a way. But to me, he was a model for me later on because he didn't let that get him down.
How much older was your brother, Sam?
4 years older than me.
Okay, so he's a senior, and you're just about ready to go into high school, and you're watching him pitch on what, Tuesdays and Fridays?
Well, when I started playing baseball, my dad managed a team of older players. My brother was one of them. Now, just to help babysit me or what have you, he allowed me to be on the bench with him. I wasn't really old enough to play with him, but I used to watch my brother pitch all the time because we didn't have a thing when I was real young, like Little League. Excuse me.
Harper, his father was a quarterback at Pitt and played in the Rose Bowl. Tom McDowell, quarterback.
Still hold the record in the Rose Bowl for a punt. But in any event, he was the manager until one day I was just an outfielder. He had put me in when we were extremely bad and losing by large numbers or winning by large numbers. He put me in right field. Well, this particular day, we were winning 9-0 or something like that. And our center fielder was the last batter. My dad knew that switching and all that stuff. And so he says, Sam, go out to center field for the last inning. So I went out to center field. And we had a guy on second base, and one hop was hit to me in center field. And I picked it up and threw the guy out at home plate. And when my dad saw that, when we got home that night, he told me I was going to be a pitcher. And in the backyard from that point on, every chance he got, now he worked weird hours working in a steel mill. And we would work on pitching, wind up, follow through, everything. When I eventually got to the major leagues, to give you a quote, I signed with the Cleveland Indians, and the very next day they sent me to Cleveland for Mel Harder, a Hall of Fame pitcher, was a pitching coach at that time. He was supposed to look me over and send a report to the minor leagues where I was going on what they wanted me to work on. And he quoted, and it was in the papers, when they said, well, what does Sam McDowell have to work on? He said, just let him pitch. He says, he's got the 4 greatest pitches I ever saw in my life. And it was because my dad, who not only, he took engineering in school, and then he switched to become a dentist. He wanted to be a dentist during the Second World War. And so he studied medicine, and then they sent out the word during the Second World War for people that knew and understood engineering and all kinds of stuff to work in the steel mill, to work on the steel plates for the ships, to get rid of the magnetism and all that stuff. Anyhow, he knew everything about the human body and the different muscle groups and how they worked and so on. And so he worked with me on everything. And when I got to the big leagues, basically I just needed to know how to pitch, not a follow through, not a new windup, not an arm arc and all that stuff. I already had that down pat with the pitches. And in fact, that was one of the things that bothered me in baseball back then, was that, which we were talking about earlier, Maddox, the science of pitching. Well, because I threw so hard, we had managers over and over and said, just throw the ball, just throw the ball. Worry about a curveball or a slider or this or that later on. And the problem was, I don't care how hard you throw. You throw a 1, 2, 3 in a row to a hitter in a major league, he's going to hit it.
Yep.
They're not that stupid. And nobody would work with me. In fact, Bernie Tebbetts used to call all my pitches over and over and over, which caused a long time fight and basically got him fired as manager with the Cleveland Indians because he would keep calling my pitches. And when I get my ass kicked, they'd send me to the minor leagues. I'd go to the minor leagues and just blow them away with no pitching coach down there, nothing. I was left on my own. Take Portland. I was 8-0.
8-0 at Portland Beavers.
8-0 with I was striking out like 12 batters a game, averaging. I had a no 85 earned run average and so on. And then they finally bring me back up to the major leagues. And I wouldn't come up to the major leagues. I was 7-0 in San Diego. We just gotten back from Hawaii. And Gabe Paul calls me, the general manager, says, Sam, we want you in LA tomorrow so you can pitch against the Angels. And I told my general manager back then, I'm only 19 years old. I'm telling my general manager, don't bring me up. If Bernie Tebbetts going to continue to call my pitches, I'm not coming up. And Gabe Paul got so angry, he says, I'm going to bury you in the minor leagues. And he hung up. Well, I just knew that the rules of baseball, that if they kept me in the minor leagues that year, they lose me. And so I didn't care if I was in the minor leagues for the rest of the year because I had a major league contract already. And so I was in high cotton, you might say. But anyhow, I pitched a no-hitter against San Diego, and the very next day I get a call from Gabe Paul. He said, okay, you win. He says, I talked to Brady. He's not going to call you pitchers anymore. And from that day forward, I became a pitcher. And I was fortunate to have Jack Sanford and Elvin Dark as a manager and pitching coach because Jack Sanford would sit with me on the bench, tell me what I did wrong the inning before, what I should look for this coming inning. And he helped me understand the full realm of the science of pitching, which was the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
Well, you mentioned Bernie Tebbetts. I got a picture of him here, and the stats that I have in the middle, this guy could hit now. He was a pretty good major leaguer and catcher, so he just called middle. Just throw it over the plate, kid, and you can't do that, right? And you didn't know any better. You were 20 years old. So there were some issues, I guess, early on, right? Just the struggle of learning how, as Bob said just before we went on the air, the magic of pitching, and Warren Spahn would say it's, hitting is timing, and good pitching is breaking up that timing and offsetting it to the point where the guy's just, even if it's just a little bit off, that's how you can win.
An interesting thought there, you brought up Warren Spahn. Warren Spahn helped me with my pickoff move when I wasn't even in pro ball yet, which was quite interesting. But I used to pitch batting practice in the Pirates because my high school, where I went to high school, was right next to Forbes Field, the stadium where the Pirates were. And so day after day after day, there were stories about me pitching a one-hitter, no-hitter, striking out 20 guys, 18 guys. And so the Pirates got quite interested in me, but because of the rules of baseball, they couldn't talk to me. So they would have me come down and pitch batting practice against the hitters, which, by the way, Clemente would not get in a batting cage against me because I was all over the place. But in any event, while they were there, each team heard about me. So whatever team came into town, they would send their ambassadors, at least 2 players, over to talk to me and how you doing and what have you, which I thought was great. But Warren Spahn came over and we were talking and this and that. And I was having trouble at the time with a pickup. And I said, Mr. Spahn, I said, you're pretty good at picking people off. How can you help me? And he said, son, he said, I can't help you. You have to help yourself. And he said, if you have a mirror at home, he said, try and pick yourself off in front of that mirror. And I thought at first it was a joke. And then he said, no, I'm serious. Try and pick yourself off in front of that mirror, which I would go home. I worked on over and over and over. And as you probably know with my record, I set every record for a left-hander picking people off at first base. And that was because of Warren Spahn.
Wow, what a good
Now,
story.
did you have a windup like Warren here on the left, Sam? Please tell me
No.
that you didn't throw with the ball almost touching the ground and your leg as high up in the air as you can get it. That was early Warren. That's before he became the artist. The picture on the right, excuse me, I wanted to get an idea of the thinker. The guy that says on purpose, I've got the ball and maybe my rotation is just a little bit different here on this two-seam fastball that I'm going to be throwing. And I get the ball to move a little bit more, and just studying the art as well as the science of how to pitch and get people out.
Well, Warren Spahn, I don't know how he could have any control with that windup that he did have initially. He calmed it down later. But Warren Spahn had exceptional control. Exceptional. Like a Maddox. Where they could actually hit a dime on home plate if you asked them.
Yeah.
That's what made them so great. I didn't have that control, but I relied on my fastball.
I want to tell you one thing. Having worked in the visiting clubhouses for years and then having represented ball players for years and years, I talked to all of them, okay? All the great hitters. And I can tell you this 100%. The most feared pitcher from Mickey Mantle to Tony Oliva, who we just talked to a few weeks ago, to all these guys, they all feared Sam McDowell. All of them. Dean Chance told me, by the way, Dean Chance saved his 20th win, and Dean was my guy. Dean told me that this guy had the best stuff he ever saw. Not Koufax, this guy. He threw harder than anybody. People were never afraid to face Nolan Ryan, and I'm going to tell you why. I think it might have had a little to do with Sam's drinking. He'd get didn't shave for a couple days. He had a kind of a crazy look in his eye, and he was like the Ryan Dern thing when he warmed up. Casey had him throw one over the catcher's head, and then Casey had him have a white handkerchief, and Casey made him rub it in mud and put it in his back pocket. He'd throw the first pitch over the head. He'd pull out the white handkerchief and wipe his glasses off with mud on his and the players are watching. Okay, so Sam had that same thing. He didn't want to dig in against this guy. Believe me when I tell you that. And Willie Davis, the story I told you earlier, was the perfect. You did not want to dig in against this guy, and that really, I think, helped him. That's it. But I just think the most feared
was I didn't have much of control, even though I was able to throw the spots later on in my career, still throwing just as hard. But I would say my first 5 to 6 years in major leagues, I had no idea where the ball was going, basically. And I was knocking guys down sometimes accidentally. Sure, you do it sometimes intentionally, but you don't really. To me, the science of pitching that Sanford used to tell me, you want to really take advantage of a hitter and get him to back off the plate. You don't throw at his head. You throw right here, because that's more frightening, seeing the ball go right by and hearing it, than if you go here, because you don't think, you just go down. Okay. And they think about that pitch a couple times, a couple pitches later.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that in the beginning, but I learned it through Jack. And then how to set up a hitter where you're always thinking about 3 pitches, always. The one you're going to throw right now and the next 2, depending on what that hitter does, what his reflex was, whether he swung, whether he missed, whether he fouled it off. Whatever his particular action was, dictates your next 2 pitches to that hitter. And I never knew that until Jack Sanford came on board. And that's all part of the science of pitching.
His name's Mark Lemke. He played second base for the Atlanta Braves. I did a radio show with him, and we had just gone to a commercial. And I said, Lemmer, what's it like facing Randy Johnson when he's on the mound, that big lefty? And you were a big lefty. You were the Randy Johnson of your day. Is it fair to say that, Bob? Because there's no, you know what I mean? Just a guy his size and
Randy Johnson was the Sam McDowell of his day.
Okay, thank you. All right. I want to make sure we're clear. And I said, what's it like facing that guy? He goes, well, it's not just him, it's anybody. The human being can get out of the way of about 92 or 93. Anything above that, when you know you can't get out of the way, you don't have enough time, that's the scary part. Stepping in when a guy who throws 98, that's the fear factor that any batter would have normally. And I guess, Bob, in your locker room experience, you're talking about guys that are, professionals at every level, but they know that when Sam's on the mound, that every last one of them, it might get plunked in the ribs or in the back of the head or in the leg, even if it's not on purpose, and you don't have time to defend yourself. Is there a fairness in that, the way I said it, Sam?
How about Lou Burdett used to say, I got more people out making them think I was throwing a spitball than actually throwing a spitball. He said just by touching around, moving around his hat, making them think that he would throw it. And Sam got more people out just by the fear of him without throwing at him. You know what I mean? Just by
by the way, I also had a spitball, and the only time I would use it in a game is in the first 2 innings. And I didn't hide it that much. I wanted him to know I had one. And so that the hitter, when he came up, had that in the back of his mind that any pitch could have been a spitball, which sinks a little bit. And to me, I thought there was a great advantage, as does most pitchers. The only one that tried to hide it well, because he used it all the time, was Gaylord. And I could tell you stories about that, on how he hit it, and umpires used to test him and everything. They could never find it. It was unbelievable. But I wanted to mention Randy Johnson. When he was with Seattle and they first signed him and they brought him up to the big leagues, Mike Paul, one of my former teammates in Cleveland, was the pitching coach. And over, as you may know, in his beginning, they kept sending him back to the minor leagues, bringing him back up, sending him back, bringing him back up, because nothing was working for him. He didn't have any control and so on. Hey, they come to Texas, and this is when I was the counselor in sports psychology and the EAP for Texas. And Mike comes to me one day and he says, Sam, I was with the major league team at that time. I used to spend 10 days there in minor leagues and then back and forth. And he said, Sam, he said, could you help me with Randy? I said, what? What's the matter? And he says, well, we just can't figure out Randy. What's going on? And I said, well, when is he doing his side work? He said, today. I said, okay, I'll come down to the bullpen and let me see what he does. And so Randy's throwing and pitching down there, and he has pretty good control. And I said to Mike, what's the problem? He said, that's the problem. He has pretty good control here, but when he gets on that mound, and he says, something's wrong. And I said, no, not really. So I pulled Randy aside and I said, Randy, what are you thinking when you get on that mound and you start to pitch? He said, well, I'm just thinking about all the hitters' strengths and weaknesses and what have you. And I said, you focus mostly on their strengths, right? He said, yeah. I said, did you know that you're a defensive pitcher, not an offensive pitcher? And I said, once you study everything about a hitter pre-game, I said, that's the end of it. So when you get on that mound, you got to think about Randy, only Randy. And that if you throw your pitches where you want to, you're going to get the results you want. Instead of trying to worry about the hitter and wondering how great the hitter is and how terrible you are, reverse it. Why don't you start thinking about exactly where you're going to throw the ball and what the reason is for it? Then commit to it. And the hell with the hitter, what he could do or couldn't do with it, you take care of it. You take charge. And he looked at me and he smiled like a little child at Christmas time, just got a present. Because it clicked. The light bulb went off because nobody thought of telling him that. And history has what happened from there on. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not taking full credit for it, but I did give him some ideas that could advance him and help him.
Bob, it's all about, or excuse me, Sam, it's all about giving information that a player can use and use right away, you know? And Randy could obviously go, I've been thinking about the wrong stuff. Why don't I think about how I'm going to make John Kruk look like an idiot in an all-star at bat? And I can do that because I'm just going to throw high and inside, and he won't know what he's doing. Then I'm going to throw my slider, and I'm going to rack him up in 3 pitches. You mentioned something about Maddox. Do you mind if I mention one quick story? I hope you don't mind. It's not even a story, but it's just a quote. I think they were going to try to put it on his plaque in Cooperstown because it was so relevant. I struck out more guys with batting practice fastballs than any other pitch I ever threw. Think about that for just a second, because everybody's expecting the ball to go this way or that way or up and down and whatever. He just threw on a 2-strike at bat to anybody. You're thinking, oh, here comes something. And when it comes out of the hand, it's middle, and it's going to break. And it doesn't. And it stays middle, but you're waiting for it. You wait, and next thing you know, you look like a fool because you're expecting the ball to do something. That's mastery, if you ask me. That's when the pitcher is playing mind games with the batter, where you just throw a middle strike over the middle of the plate and nobody can hit it. It's just amazing how he was able to do that.
Yep.
It's a mastery. Yep. Well, let's go back to your early days, if you don't mind. What I'd like to do, Sam, you mentioned you're throwing batting practice, but here at Central Catholic, right, this is a shot that I was able to find. You recognize this building, don't you?
Oh, yeah. In fact, if you were to have the camera go around to the right about 50 yards, you could see Forbes Field Stadium right behind my school. That's where the Pirates were and where I pitched batting practice. But yep, that's my high school.
Well, and also you mentioned, Bill Mazeroski, that was 1960, right? So baseball in the Pittsburgh area, and you mentioned Forbes Field, that was a shining time. So you had, I think, a little extra motivation in terms of your love and appreciation for baseball, especially because the city was playing, the Pirates were fantastic back in those days. They ended up winning the World Series during that time where you're there. Was that any influence at all on you?
No, not really. As I said, my first 5 or 6 years in baseball, in pro ball, I was just oblivious to everything, just like a little kid should be. I had no idea where I was, what I was doing, how I was doing, and what have you. I'm just having fun, just like a teenager trying to have fun playing a game. You brought up something interesting because I signed in 60. And in winter ball that year, we had winter ball at St. Petersburg where they sent me. And I can remember laying in a motel bed. We had 5 guys in a room watching the World Series when Mazeroski hit that home run. And I had family that was in the stands at the time.
Wow. So it was up close and personal for you too. Plus, you're homegrown from there, so you knew every guy on the team, I'm sure, and you get to throw batting practice to most of them, except to Roberto Clemente. You couldn't throw it to Roberto because he didn't want to face you, did he?
He would not get in the cage.
but everybody else said, hey, throw middle outside, man. He can't hit it. You probably had a great scouting report with all the guys that you were hanging around there in the minor leagues.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. We'll talk a little bit about the next days, right? You get to go to Salt Lake. What was baseball like for you in Salt Lake?
Again, as I said, I was having a great time. I really enjoyed it. The people there are fantastic. I mean, they treated me almost like their son because I actually had homemade dinners for me. They kind of took me under the wing, but again, I just had a great time pitching, enjoyed it, and really didn't realize where I was and what I was doing. I mean, a professional baseball player. To me, I was just having fun like I did in amateur ball. Uh, and it was just wonderful in that respect. Um, uh, I remember seeing different managers send down from the major leagues some major league players to Salt Lake City, and I just was in awe of them. I remember George Spencer was the first one that was sent back. And I mean, here's a guy that was in his 30s at the end of his career, but he was still a major league player. And I was just in awe of him. Same way with Luke Easter when they sent him back to Salt Lake City and so on. I just marveled at them.
So you were a fan of the game too, growing up. I mean, some of these names that you're mentioning are guys that you had either seen or listened to on the radio and knew that they had, major league careers, and you're this close to actually getting your break.
Actually, you brought up an interesting point here again. When you say about a fan of the game, I never saw a baseball game, never heard a baseball game until the day I pitched in professional ball.
How about
I
that?
never had time. And when I pitched batting practice for the Pirates, even though they gave me tickets for me and my family to watch the game, my parents wouldn't let me. I had to go home to do my homework and what have you. So I never got to see a baseball game.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
didn't have TV back there until later on, and they weren't televising baseball then. So I never got to see a game. What's interesting though is that my entire amateur career, Little League, I went to Williamsport for the World Series with the Pittsburgh team. I went to I'm trying to think of it. Philadelphia for Pony League World Series Championship. Colt League. I pitched out in Pasadena, California for the Colt League World Series, which is interesting too, by the way, that Mel Queen, a pretty good pitcher for Cincinnati, you may remember, his dad was one of the sponsors and anchors out there in Pasadena. And I used to borrow cigarettes from him because I was smoking back then. And they kept bringing it up all the time when later on.
Yeah, you're just borrowing one. You're just gonna borrow one. That's all. Yeah.
And the American Legion. Okay, I played in the World Series there in the American Legion, and ironically, I was in the World Series of every amateur level there was. Never came close in the major leagues.
How about that? Yeah, I wanted to bring that up at one point. I mean, some of these great feats that you were a part of in doggone Indians were, finishing in 7th place in the American League. So many of those. But
Yeah.
I want to bring up, if you don't mind, 1960. Let me see if any of these names ring a bell with you, Sam. Eugene Banks. No, not, yeah, Bates. Eugene Bates, Edward Bork, Ernest Carr, Robert Casburn, Roy Chambers, John Denyer, I'm Walter Dabrowski, I'm going to call that, Elwin, Ed Gentiles, Givens, Harris, Irvin, Donald Johnson, Frank Lanier, Clarence Long, Gordy Lund, Walter Merrick, Robert Miller, James Pace, John Parker, Johnny Parker, Claude Pinder, Harold Rayford, June Raines, a couple more, Kenneth Reddy, Ron Shamp, James South, Earl Ward, and Bob Walensky. What do those guys mean to you?
Well, they were all my teammates in 60.
Yep.
And you mentioned my catcher, Walt Dover-Zakowski, which I became very good friends with both in and out of baseball. I know that, to me, I could never figure out why June Raines was my catcher also. I never understood why he didn't make the major leagues. He hit like a whirlwind in Lakeland, and he had an arm that was like a rifle. I just never understood it. And I know he played in the minor leagues 5-6 more years, and then he left. But some of those guys, I just didn't understand why they didn't make it. But remember back then, the Indians in the olden days had 19 minor league teams, and that was the least of any major league team. The Yankees and the Dodgers had 22 and 24 minor league teams. So each position, you had 10 to 15 players ready to take your job back then. Not like today, when you have 5 minor league teams, that's it.
And the money back then was amazing. You told me before we went on the air you were making $160 a month. Sam, are you kidding me? How does anyone get by? I mean, you can't bum a cigarette on $160 a month.
Ironically, in my case, it wasn't that bad because remember, I signed for a $70,000 bonus, and it was spread out over a 5-year period to save me taxes, but also I had that in the bank as a backup. But I must say, I still could live on $160 back then, as long as you're not extravagant and what have you. But you could live on that. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how the married guys with children in the minor leagues could exist. I really don't. But they did. And of course, in the wintertime, every one of us had a job. I worked in a sporting goods store. I worked in a steel mill being a runner, running notes back and forth, United States Steel.
Was that through your dad because of his connection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which, by the way, in fact, I was asked this the other day because it's a 50-year anniversary for the Players Association, and they want to do a television interview and blah blah blah. And it was interesting. I knew Marvin Miller before he ever got into baseball.
Wow.
He was an executive for the United States Steel Workers Union in Pittsburgh, and when they were on strike, my dad took me with him to the Union Hall because he couldn't trust me at home. My mother was in the hospital at the time, so I would have been at home all alone, and that was a no-no. So he took me to the Union Hall, and I met Marvin Miller there. I didn't know who he was or what he was,
Sure.
And I didn't care what he was either. But it was interesting. He brought it up to me, let's say 2-3 years after he became our executive director in the union.
So the union and the National Labor Relations Board and all the tie-ins between getting business and employees, and that was his strength. Obviously, Marvin Miller was the guy that basically kept baseball afloat in the days where there was a lot of struggle, and he was an integral part of keeping that together. If you don't mind, real quick, I was Jerry McMorris, who ended up bringing the Rockies to Colorado with Pete Coors and the Monfort brothers. Jerry had to deal with the Teamsters before he got into baseball. He ran a truck delivery business. He had 33 terminals all across the country, and the Teamsters wanted to shut him down one day. When he gets into baseball, the owners say, gladly, we know that you can communicate, you can negotiate with some tough people, and that's a tremendous part of it. It certainly is in terms of the dollars and cents with baseball. So your relation with Marvin Miller, what an amazing connection between the two of you. And you're still friends? You said just a short while ago that you've seen him recently?
Oh, no. Marvin's dead.
You were friends while he was alive. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I needed to clarify that.
Yeah. Interestingly, a couple things you had mentioned. One of them was that when these guys were going around as to wanting to be elected to be the union executive for us, They had judges, they had attorneys, they had everybody. And Marvin Miller came around and he gave his talk too and what have you. And when they left, you had a vote on who you want to represent you. And I didn't realize it, I didn't know it, but in his book that he wrote that Sam McDowell was the only person in the Indians organization that voted for him, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah.
The second thing you brought up, which I thought was quite interesting, I truly believe in my heart that Marvin Miller saved baseball. I know the owners will not admit it. The owners will not talk about it. But with everything that occurred in baseball during his tenure, if you notice, the incomes kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in baseball. Okay? That was in part by Marvin Miller not accepting the status quo. And therefore, the owners didn't accept the status quo anymore. And now they started working on all kind of ideas on how to advance baseball and to make more money.
Completely amazing the way that the old school 40s, 50s, 60s started to change. And Curt Flood had something to do with that. You were in the game when Curt Flood was basically a scapegoat, right? Pretty good ball player. He says he wants free agency. Well, they grant it to him, but then guess who doesn't get to play anymore? He's out of baseball forever. But that sure opened the door for other guys. And unfortunately, he was, a victim, I guess, of his own success. But everybody else started to really take advantage of that. And then the money started changing, as you just mentioned, Sam. It was an amazing turnabout.
What's very sad, I think, is, remember I told you for 20 years I was a counselor for Andy A.P. for Texas Rangers and Toronto Blue Jays, and I was always around the athletes. And when Curt Flood died, there was a big story in the paper and what have you. And just on my own, I went around asking some of the players if they knew who Curt Flood was. There was only one player, Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan was the only one that knew who Curt Flood was.
Wow.
That's two organizations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Harper, I got a story for you.
Please.
As we're talking to Sam, you see a very serious, business-like man, right? As you're talking to him, I keep thinking back. I got to tell you some funny stories. It's spring training, 1964.
Easy, big guy. Remember, I'm married.
I know. No. This is This is. I told this to Tim, his son, and he went nuts. But Sam forgot it. But I have the newspaper in the garage for proof. Okay. He's in Palm Springs, and all the big papers are covering the Cleveland Indians, but the Palm Springs Gazette was like a small newspaper, a local paper. So they had some tomato can guy that was a sports writer for the Palm Springs Gazette, and he said, "Mr. McDowell, can I have some of your time and interview?" And Sam said, "Sure." And he talked to the guy, and Sam was sitting with the first baseman of the Cleveland Indians, who's a left-handed hitter named Fred Whitfield. And Sam was sitting with him, and they had the photographer of the Palm Springs take a picture of Sam and Fred sitting on the bench. So he interviewed Sam. This is on a Saturday because it was in the Sunday paper, and the people went nuts. He interviewed Sam, and after the interview, he said, "Oh, Sam, who was your teammate sitting next to you? Because it's going to be in the paper on Sunday." And he said, "Oh, that's our first baseman, Fred Shitfield." Now listen to this. The Sunday paper, Palm Springs Gazette, said Sam McDowell and first baseman Fred Shitfield in the thing. Now where else who could ever come up with that? Now you see a serious guy here. Yeah. This kind of stuff went on which is what I used to go. I actually have the newspaper cut out downstairs. It's unbelievable. I told his son Tim that, and Sam didn't remember a lot of things he didn't remember, but that was hilarious.
So you're a prankster, and we mentioned Maddox. Now, did you ever pee on somebody's leg while you were in the shower, Sam? Was that part of your repertoire?
No.
Okay, good. You're a good man. Maddox would do that all the time. He'd walk up to you and say, "Hey, I got a really funny story I want to tell you." And while he's telling you the story, you're showering, you get your hair, you clean yourself up, you got a big date, and then you go, why is the water a different temperature down by my kneecaps?
No.
So I'm glad you didn't do that. Now, Maddox says he didn't, but everybody else in the locker room knows he did. So he can't get away with his innocence anymore.
And I remember another game. We're at a place called PJ's in Hollywood. There was a Cleveland reporter with us, and Sam was in Dodger Stadium against it was in Anaheim Stadium against the Angels, and he lost 1-0. He pitched a perfect game, but what happened, as I recall, a guy Duke Sims, the catcher, missed a third strike. So the guy goes to first base. He tries to steal second. Duke Sims overthrew, and the guy ends up on third, and somebody hit a sacrifice fly, and the guy scores, and Sam lost the game 1-0. Well, the reporter, I'll never forget this. The Cleveland reporter, Sam would probably know who he was. He's out drinking with us in PJ's in Hollywood.
Russ Snyder.
That's who it was. Very good, Sam. And we're there. That's where Trini Lopez was at the piano bar, and Eddie Cano at the piano bar. Trini Lopez sung in there. Anyway, we're in this restaurant, and he said, well, Sam, what do you think about the game tonight? And Sam said, all I can say, as a catcher, Duke Sims makes one hell of a first baseman. And that made the papers. Do you remember that, Sam?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So does Duke. Duke brings that up every now and then when I talk to him.
Yeah.
Well, you got plenty of time to think in the game of baseball in between starts, and you certainly have, as Bob has mentioned a couple of times, been able to get the one-liner in. That's pretty good. When you finally get brought up and you get to stay up, what was that feeling like for you? Going, I am pitching in the major leagues. I'm going against the Yankees or Dodgers or Giants and Pirates and all these great organizations, and I deserve to be here. Was there ever a moment where you had to pinch yourself and say, is this really happening? Or was this a culmination of a lot of work and I need to believe that I'm the best, just like the information that you gave Randy Johnson?
I would say no, not initially. When I came up, I was still struggling with self-confidence, believing in myself, not knowing much about the game and how really it was, the history and all that stuff. Again, as I say, I was just a kid trying to have fun, enjoy myself, and just get paid for doing something that I like and I enjoy, and so on. I didn't really realize until the first time I stepped in Yankee Stadium. And when I never was there before, never knew anything about it, didn't know about the history and what have you, until we were on the bus going to the ballpark and they were talking about the Yankee Stadium and all this and Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and blah, 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 blah. And it started to hit me a little bit. But then it really hit me when I came up the steps through the tunnel into the dugout, and I stepped up and stood on the top steps and took a look. That's when it hit me. I'll say where I actually felt something. I didn't realize what it was. I wasn't thinking about any particular player or anything at the time, but I just knew I was someplace special. There was something special about this. And then my very first time that I faced the Yankees, it was normal game and what have you, until I faced Mickey Mantle. And when I was standing on the mound and he was coming to the plate right-handed, I was just in awe of the man. And I knew I wanted to get him out. I mean, I always loved the challenge, too much so sometimes. But I loved the challenge. I lived for a challenge. And so guys like Mickey Mantle, Harmon Killebrew, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and so on, I really and truly just get up for that, the challenge. And in fact, you may remember the All-Star game I pitched where I struck out 7 consecutive batters there in the All-Star game, and every one of them was a Hall of Famer, starting with Willie Mays, then Willie McCovey, on down the list. And I struck them all out. And I just love that.
I would imagine, especially because of becoming a fan of the game, stepping up from the dugout onto the field there back in the day when they didn't have gates and they had protective fences and all that kind of stuff. But they also had Monument Park out there and the scoreboard. There are just some things that are the Longines clock that they would have, all these things that are just signature timepieces for the game itself. And you're finally there. I'm here. I'm Sam McDowell, and I belong here, doggone it. That's, I mean, what a great time and moment in history for you. You got to enjoy that. Good for you. You know, that did Sam Shepard call your name out there in the, not Sam Shepard, what Bob Shepard, I think the guy with the famous voice, he was there for 200 or 300 years calling Yankee games. He was the announcer, Bob Shepard. I said, Sam, please forgive me. But when he called my name once in a football game, I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in my life. And you got to experience all that kind of stuff there for, 13 years.
And also Frank Crosetti, the third base coach for like 100 years. I mean, he was the third base coach for 7 consecutive managers in New York.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, the history of that game there. And there's a lot of it in Cleveland too, I have to admit. I played a Municipal Stadium before they tore it down, and this is for football. There was a moment where I'm in the dugout. I'm sitting on the bench. There's a bench, but there's another spot at the top of that. So my feet are on the where you would go on the bench, and then my butt's up higher. And there was a security guard that walked by. And I go, sir, would you mind answering a real quick question? Is this the home or the visitors dugout? And he goes, this is the visitors dugout when the Indians play here. You're on the third base side, and that is the visitor side. The home team is over on the other side. I go, so Babe Ruth or Joe DiMaggio or Mickey Mantle or Al Kaline, the names you mentioned, Harmon Killebrew, Norm Cash, those guys could have been sitting in the same spot that I am right here. And he goes, yeah, come to think of it, yeah, all those guys, that's right about where they'd be sitting at one point or another. And that's just a connection with time and everything. And you got to experience that every place you went, right? Maybe not so much in Anaheim because there is a brand new stadium, and Bob will attest to the fact that he probably knows that there's fresh paint on the wall, but all those other places that you got to be a part of, Fenway, Yankee Stadium, Dodger Stadium, Wrigley Field, and obviously in Ohio there in Cleveland Stadium.
Yep. Tell you an interesting story, although it's a football one.
Please.
Down here in the villages where I live, there used to be a couple of football players among the baseball players that we lived here. We retired here. And, of course, we play golf all the time. And one of my better friends by the name of Dick Pessina, he was a linebacker for the New York Giants for like 10 years. And he tells me the story about Municipal Stadium in Cleveland, and every time they came into town, he hated it because it was the only stadium in which they left the pitcher's mound there. They didn't take it away. And he said that the runners, the halfbacks, and what have you, used to continually and intentionally back him up to that mound to get him to trip and fall, because he's backing up onto the pitcher's mound.
Yeah.
That was there.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. The pitcher's mound is basically almost right in the doggone middle of the field, the way that they designed it and the way the football configuration fit in with baseball. Yeah. So home field advantage. Go Browns, right?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about, your early days. You mentioned the All-Star game. That's when you're starting to kind of get your groove together, right? You're throwing hard. Your strikeout ratio is up. Your walks per 9 innings is going down. What's this, 4 or 5 years into your professional career, and you're finally learning how to pitch in a manner that's going to keep you there for a while.
Yep, I was really enjoying the game then. I wasn't so much worried anymore about what I can or can't do because I was now realizing what I can do, what it was like being a success versus my previous 3 or 4 years in the big leagues, what have you, and really enjoying the time there as much as I could, being who I was. But it was very difficult there because we knew when the spring training ended, we're going to be in last place because our general manager was Gabe Ball. He was not going to spend a dime. He spent nickels like manhole covers. And so we knew that we were going to be in last place, that the only thing left for us was our own personal pride in what we can do and how we can do it and so on. I mean, put it this way. If you take a look at my pitching there in 68, 69, how'd you like to have a 181 earned run average, which was a record for a left-hander in the history of baseball, 325 strikeouts, and you can't win 20 games?
Yeah. Yeah. And your team finishes in seventh place in the American League. Yeah. One of the tragedies that they're a part of it. I showed a picture a moment ago of Sonny Siebert. I wanted you to bring him up, or at least if you wouldn't mind, some of the guys, some of your teammates, Louis Tiant, a very young Louis Tiant back in the day. Talk about just the pitching staff in general and what it meant for you just to learn how to pitch and watch other guys really excel and help with your game.
A little bit of history on Sonny. He was signed as an outfielder. And for the first couple of years in the minor leagues, he was an outfielder. But because he had such a strong arm, one of the coaches in the minor leagues told him that he wasn't a good enough hitter, that if he wanted to stay in baseball, he might think about changing to become a pitcher. And he did, and became a damn good one, a really good one. He was also an All-American basketball player. In fact, on the Cleveland Indians, we had 3 All-Americans. Steve Hamilton, when he was with Cleveland, he was a professional basketball player. And Ty Bond, he was there for just a year, but he was a professional basketball player. They were great athletes. And I have a picture in my hallway. I didn't keep much memorabilia. Bob's the one that knows and understands that stuff. But I have a picture in my hallway here, which has Louis Tiant, Sonny Siebert, Steve Harrigan, myself, and Stan Williams. And the significance of that was that Major League Baseball did research to find who was the greatest starting pitching staff in baseball history. And of course, you had the 420-game winners in Baltimore, 420-game winners at Cleveland in '54, and so on. And they came up with the Cleveland Indians by far. Our starting pitching staff for 68, 69, and 70 was the greatest in the history of the game.
Wow.
That's what about Gary Bell? Was Gary Bell part of that, Sam?
No, he was traded to Boston already.
Oh.
Although Gary Bell was a great pitcher, too.
And as many Northern Ohioans would suffer through, not only now, and the Browns were pretty stinking good there back in the 60s when you were playing there, same stadium. They were winning NFL championships, but you guys were struggling year after year.
I got to, when I first got to Cleveland, there was a place called the Commodore, which was out east. It used to be a hotel that they made into apartments. And that's where the baseball players, a lot of us stayed. That's when I was first married and had a baby and everything. Also, the football players stayed there for the Steelers, or for the Browns.
The Browns.
And I got to be real good friends with a lot of them. And I used to tease them all the time because I was a Steeler fan. Born and raised and lived in Pittsburgh all my life. So we used to tease each other all the time. But I used to drive up to Cleveland to watch some of the football games, and then some of the ball players used to come down in the off season to Pittsburgh. We'd have a good time.
Well, yeah, for obvious reasons, and most people would not think of it this way, but the Steelers were terrible up until the 70s. So in the early 60s, you're teasing a team that's actually really good in the Browns versus an organization that couldn't get themselves out of wet paper sack in the Steeler organization. That you must have been on the wrong end of some of that ribbing every now and then with some of those players.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
I got to also be pretty good friends with Jim Brown for a while.
Sure.
For a while. We'll just leave it there.
All right. Lou the Toe Grossa, and then obviously, who else am I mini? Autogram, some really great players that were around in that time in the early 60s, mid-60s.
Leroy Kelly?
Yep, Leroy Kelly.
Well, you had some success. You got the cover of Sports Illustrated. Sam, talk about that and, what was going on in your career and your pitching, your accuracy, kind of timing, everything that you're doing that's working that has hitters just befuddled.
By the way, how much longer is this?
We'll go as long as you can.
How about another 15 minutes?
How about that? We'll do it.
Okay. The Sports Illustrated, are you aware of the superstition that if you get on Sports Illustrated, you're going to have a bad year?
Does that start with you? I sure hope not.
It didn't start with me, but I was there with it because I had a great season going until I got on Sports Illustrated, and then it went straight downhill from there.
Oh, boy. Well, some good times, some bad times there in Cleveland, since we'll try to go through this pretty quickly. Then you go to San Francisco. You get traded, change in direction is the way a lot of general managers and upper office, front office people will call it. What was that like for you, having spent so much of a decade, 11 years there in the Cleveland area, and then moving on?
Well, actually, I hated leaving Cleveland because I made so many friends in Cleveland, and to be honest with you, I had such a good nightlife there too. But I hated to go, and of course, I was traded for Gaylord Perry and Frank Duffy, the shortstop that they said was the real reason for the trade. But in any event, I didn't honestly think they could trade me because there was a rule in baseball that you couldn't trade a player if he was injured. And that year, the Indians knew that in early August, I had torn my rotator cuff and that it was very painful. In fact, if you take a look at my 71 season, you'll see there was 2 or 3 times where I was on a disabled list because of the rotator cuff. I get traded to San Francisco, and of course, Charlie Fox is the manager, and he loved me and all the hype and everything. And I go there, and I'm trying to pitch with the pain that you couldn't believe. I was okay for the first 5 innings. Then the pain would really take over. And no matter how many aspirin and Tylenol and painkillers I tried to take, it wouldn't numb the pain. And once I got to the 5th or 6th inning. However, if I rested for at least 6, 7, 8 days in between, I could actually pitch 7 innings before it just got too much for me. But that was the type of season I was having with him. And of course, I tried to take care of both the depression and the pain with booze. And I was drinking all the time now. Still, not before a game when I pitched, or the day before a game. I never did that. But I sure as hell made up for it on the night I'm pitching, made up for it the next day and the next day until I was scheduled to pitch again. And even the booze wouldn't deaden the pain.
Would you say that there was a method to your madness, even though you're justifying not drinking the day that you're going to pitch or the night before? Every other time, I'm not pitching, so I am going to go on it. Then you started, because of the pain too, you mentioned that it's excruciating. My arm is feels like it's going to fall off because I'm overworked. And back in those days, they wouldn't put you on the DL or on an IL. You had to suffer through that.
Oh yeah, because the trade was so big in baseball back then that you had to get out on that mound and pitch. And in fact, Charlie Fox one time came to my room and he wanted to talk to me. And while he's sitting there talking to me, he looks over and sees a huge bottle of Percocet. And he said, "Are you taking these?" And I said, "Yeah, Charlie." I said, "I can't take the pain anymore." I said, "When I go out to pitch, I'm taking 4 or 5 of these." And he calls the team doctor the next day and they do the research again on my shoulder and this and that. And they knew there was not much they could do for it. And I just had to rough it out.
Yeah.
And even the manager knew it then. But I still tried to medicate it with painkillers and with booze.
Well, they say that Sandy Koufax, he was suffering from arthritis, but he just needed to, if he had Tommy John or some of the other procedures that exist today to help his arm strength and time, and taking some time off, and who knows how much longer his career. I would guess that you were under that same medical situation. I just need some time to heal up. I'm injured. I'm not 100%.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
Although, to be quite frank with you, with arthritis, they still don't have any way to take care of that when an athlete has severe arthritis. They've tried every type of medication and operation and what have you with that. So I'm not quite sure about Sandy. I think he would agree. In fact, I've talked to him about it because he was on the board of directors with me with Bat and Major League Baseball board of directors, which I'm still on the board with them. But that was tragic with Sandy and the arthritis. Now, for the different operations that you were mentioning, you're right. I mean, my partner here in Florida for 20 years was an orthopedic surgeon, and we were doing everything for the athlete, the retired athlete, including football players and everything, free of charge because some of them didn't have insurance and what have you, and especially the football players that we had that we were trying to help. And it's amazing what sports medicine has become and what it can do. There's almost no injury you could have where it's going to ruin your career. They'll give you some treatment, give you 6 weeks, and bring you back on the field, and there you are. Everything's good. That includes torn muscles. That includes rotator cuff, like I had. It includes your arteries. It includes, your tendons, everything.
Hey, Harper, I want to interject. In 1975, Sam's talking about he wasn't the same pitcher. Well, if you look it up, he had an ERA in the 2s, and he was starting to throw much like the old Sam, but the drinking had reached a point of no return, which is when he showed up in the bullpen drunk in Shea Stadium, and that was the end of it. But the point being, I think he was coming back. I think, he was only, do you realize the career this guy would have had? He was only 31, and look what he had accomplished,
Yeah.
So it's like, it's unbelievable because, that was the end. And I thought his arm, you can ask Sam, I thought your arm was coming back to what it used to be.
Actually, it was because I had a lot of off time with the Yankees the year before because they put me in a bullpen because my arm was so sore. Plus, I was drinking all the time. But Bob brings up a very important lesson in dealing with alcoholism, attempting to use willpower to try and help you cure your addiction and everything. That it doesn't work. It never has and never will work. Here's a perfect example. When I was released by the Yankees in '64, I was looking to play with somebody, so I went down to the stadium in Pittsburgh, talked to Joel Brown, the general manager, and the first thing he said was, "Sam, we know about your drinking. Have you been able to take care of it?" I said, "Oh, yeah, don't worry about it now." I said, "That's under control." And he says, "I'll tell you what I'll do." He says, "If you promise not to have a drink, I'll take you to spring training. And if you earn the spot on the team, I'll sign you. And he said, what do you want to pay for? And at that time I said 50 grand, which was fair back then. And he said, okay. So I go to spring training and I outpitch everybody on the squad.
Yeah.
And so he signs me, and I'm not drinking, not having a drop. And we go into the season, and I'm in the bullpen. I'm not even a starter. I'm a spot starter. I started against Cincinnati. I started against, I'm trying to think of the different teams. Anyhow, and finally, I'm in the bullpen in New York, in Met Stadium. And our starting pitcher gives up 3 runs, bases loaded, and they bring me in. I pitched the rest of the game, giving up 1 hit, striking out 10 batters. And we win the game. I win the game. That night, I go out and celebrate in New York. I come into the clubhouse, not having an hour's sleep, and I'm still drunk out of my mind. And I knew that was it. It's over. And that's alcoholic behavior.
You knew the parameters, didn't you? And even though you pitched well and you did what you probably would have done with any of the other organizations, with certainly with the Indians and then with the Giants, what was that like? Did you get a tap on the shoulder? What was the Turk like for you and removing you, just taking your uniform away from you?
Well, on the plane home, Joe, I'm sitting in an ILC on the charter plane, and Joe O'Brien goes to the back of the plane to the men's room and comes back and taps me on the shoulder and says, I want to see you in my office tomorrow at 9:00. And I knew it. I knew it was then. And I went into his office and sat down and he said, Sam, this won't take long. You understand. I don't have to say anything. Here's your release, and I wish you well. That was it.
Wow. Wow.
No flowers.
No. How long after that, and I know I want to be respectful of your time, so I want to move very quickly here, before you started realizing I need help and I don't know how to get it?
It was 4 years.
Okay.
I was in the insurance business and the real estate business. I knew that my time was coming. And so the years before, I went and got my real estate license, my insurance license, my insurance inspector's license, my NASD financial advisor license. And because I didn't know what I was going to be doing, so I tried to protect myself with all of it because I didn't know much about any of the industries. And I started out, a friend of mine owned a real estate company and asked me to come and work for him. So I said, fine. I went to work for him in the real estate business. That lasted about 6 months. I couldn't stand to just sit around. I got to be moving. I got to be doing things. And so I switched and went to insurance. And I was a success. In fact, I still hold the records for Aflac in Pittsburgh for some of the companies that I signed up. I signed up major grocery store chains throughout the Northeast. I was a success, but I was drinking all the time.
Yeah.
Showing up drunk and what have you. But the most important part was my wife. She just couldn't take it anymore. She tried everything. She was a typical wife, tried everything, was an enabler, tried to help me sober up time after time after time. And she'd be scared to death and not being able to sleep because I wasn't coming home at night, wondering where I was and what have you, the usual for an alcoholic's wife, and so on. And then finally that's it. I've had enough. She moved out, took the kids with her. I hit rock bottom. I sold the house. I sold the house for $100,000, and I had $120,000 worth of debts. Finally, the insurance industry, the boss came to me and said, Sam, we can't use you anymore. You're always showing up drunk and blah, 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 blah. And I had nowhere to go, and I moved in with my parents. And I was with them for about 6 months until one night I woke up in the morning, like 5 o'clock, went downstairs in my underwear, put on a pot of coffee, and just kept walking around. And I couldn't understand why there was a thought in my mind all the time. I kept hearing uh, uh, saying that you beat me, you beat me, you beat me. And I don't know what that was. I don't know what I was referring to. But I remember years earlier, the insurance industry sent me to a psychiatrist thinking he would help me. And he made a statement one day that he'd see me again, but he wanted me to go to Gateway. Now, I didn't know what Gateway was. In Pittsburgh, every single thing around is Gateway Center, the Gateway Mall, the Gateway Point, and so on. Anyhow, I get on the phone and I asked the operator, I said, connect me with Gateway. And she said, Gateway what? And I said, I don't know. She said, oh, I know. And for some reason, she connected me to the rehabilitation center. And from that point on, 44 and a half years ago, I haven't had a drink.
How about that? Well, rock bottom for some is a little bit lower than the level that you're out, and rock bottom for others isn't even close to how far you went. You were at massive debts. You lose your family. You're talking to yourself, and at 4 or 5 in the morning, you're in your underwear walking around the house, and you had a magic moment.
How's this grab you? 6 months after my recovery started, I'm sitting on a curb of Route 22 in Monroeville where we live. And that's where my wife and the kids were, right off to the side in an apartment there. I had just seen my kids, said hello and hugged and kissed them and everything because I would see them every day I could or every other day. I had 35 cents in my pocket. That was it. 35 cents. I didn't know if I wanted to go get gas because I had an appointment the next morning to sell insurance, or go get a hamburger and a Coke. For 35 cents, we had a restaurant right across the street. I could get a hamburger and a Coke. And instead, I went and got the gas for the insurance, hungrier than the son of a gun. And the next morning, I went out and sold a big policy, so I had at least some money.
Harper, let me just say this. We say in AA, we don't regret the past. Now, this story that you're just hearing, if that had not happened, I would not be alive, he would not be alive, and thousands of people all over the world would not be alive. And I can't tell you that enough. The second career he had has been far, far, far more important. He had to have the first career to have the visibility for the second career. But let me just tell you, it's like if I rolled a 7 tomorrow and somebody said, who's the number one rock star in the world you've met? It's this man right here. I mean that.
I know you do, Bob. I think, and I love you.
I love you like nobody.
I agree. I agree.
Mm.
But it's all God's plan.
Sam, part of what you went through, I'm thinking out loud, is I got a problem. I need some help. But was there a part that also during your rehab, when you stop drinking and you get over that initial reaction, where you crave things even more, those the bends, I guess some people call it, that you started wondering why and how and what you could do to prevent it? Were you thinking like that at that point, or was it something just a little more simple as this, I want to get through a day and not crave a beer or a double scotch?
Well, first of all, I never did get the bends. I was fortunate enough that when I went to the recovery center, I had already had 6 days without alcohol under my belt. And by the way, you brought up something that's very dangerous. A lot of people don't realize it, but when you go through withdrawal and you're in a heavy withdrawal with alcohol, it can kill you. You have to be under a doctor's supervision or you could die. Now, in the dealing with drugs, you could be under the uh, uh, withdrawal of any drug and you're not going to die. It's going to be painful in some cases, especially like heroin. It's going to be very painful, but you're not going to die. But with alcohol and you get into that bends, you got a problem there, very serious, and you got to be careful. I know that there's many times that in working with individuals that have come to me that have gone through or going through the bends, I myself will give him a shot of booze or 2 shots of booze just to calm him down so he doesn't die, and then get him to the hospital as quick as I can. That's a very dangerous period of time.
Okay.
In my case, I would say that the urge never goes away. It subsides somewhat. I got 44 and a half years in recovery, and there's still a rarity once in a while where a thought will come into my mind. It's the same way with smoking. When I quit smoking 25, 30 years ago, I still have an urge once in a while without even thinking, looking for a cigarette. I don't smoke it, but the urge is, you know how to handle it. The 12 steps teach you how to handle it. And you know that this too will pass.
And you're able to at least begin the first steps of getting a life, maybe not the same life, but something, getting your life back together again. What was that like for you?
You bring up a vital area. A lot of people don't understand fully that when you get a recovering alcoholic or you get a drug addict into recovery, if they follow the true recovery program, they will ultimately become more successful in any endeavor they take on than they ever dreamed. And the reason for it is, if you ever read the profile of an alcoholic or a drug addict, is one, they're far more intelligent, most people. They're extremely talented. Many are artistic. Other ones have this conceptual business mind and take any recovering alcoholic that went through the recovery the right way. You will see that within 1 to 2 years, they are extremely happy, extremely successful at whatever business they choose to take. They get their family back in some instances, or they start a brand new family and it's beautiful the way it can grow and flower. But people don't understand that end of the recovery. The success is just unbelievable. And you can check the research over and over and over, and it's the same everywhere.
Is it because they take the? I'm sorry.
Also,
Go ahead.
Also, the opposite is in effect. You can stop drinking, but if you don't recover properly, then you're in misery the rest of your life until you do. Some will go 20, 30 years without drinking. It's called a dry drunk. And they're miserable people. They go through divorce after divorce after divorce. They're terrible. And they can't figure it out. Don't understand why. Hey, I'm not drinking anymore. Yeah, but you never went through recovery.
Yep. Yeah. Let me just tell you this. He talked about Sam. One thing he's left out is one hell of an artist. Did some of the most beautiful paintings and stuff. That didn't even come up when he was talking about people. And a thing he left out is we're very sensitive. And the other thing I want to say, for an alcoholic, the worst thing in the world, that's why I'm in recovery. He isn't recovered. He's not recovered. I'm not recovered. The only way you beat this fucking disease, is when you die sober. Then you beat it. But we're all in recovery. And the only thing, when you're alone in your own head, is the worst thing for an alcoholic in recovery. Alone, you gotta that's why I go to meetings to this day. You get out, it's the treatment, as he was talking about. You need treatment. For an alcoholic, being alone in his own head is the worst thing in the world. Me. You get out and you see other people that have the same, we have that thing in common. We're all brothers and sisters, and it's just a wonderful thing. And I wouldn't even know about it. He used to send me letters. Have you gone to a meeting? Go to a meeting. You're not going to meetings. On and on and on. So thank you, Sam. Sam, I owe you my life, buddy. And I mean that. I can't say it enough.
You owe yourself. You did it, big guy. By the way, speaking about great artists, are you aware of his wife? She's an unbelievable artist, a real one. Yeah.
Well,
I like that.
she helps every week by putting Bob on the air, because we've done this now for 5-6 weeks, and Bob still doesn't have the slightest idea on what he needs to do. And she is magnificent at the technology side of making sure we get on the air, and just for hanging out with him as much as she does. There's she's recovering.
Do you really expect for him to change?
No.
Hey, Harper, that's why I managed Mickey Rooney, because he was married 8 times. I was married. We had 14 marriages between the two of us. And Mickey used to say, these scars here are not from acne; they're from rice from all the weddings.
Oh, it's all the rice. Yeah, getting hit in the face with all of that. You brought up an interesting point to me, Sam. The attention and the focus, the detail, the enthusiasm, the gusto, if you will, of a person that loses it because of alcohol. But then when alcohol disappears and they get to focus and have fun and determination and discipline, and you add all of that without the alcohol, they become as successful as they can possibly ever be.
Yep.
It needs to be learned, though. They got to learn how to do it the right way. And I guess the recovery, get that out of the way, and then let's focus back on your life. Some of the things that you learned, I'm going to bring a picture here of the University of Pittsburgh. For obvious reasons, you go there to study. You've been all over the world, really, to learn more about this specific disease and the ability to learn how the right way to recover is. Talk a little bit about your education after you went through recovery and rehab, and how important that's been for you.
Well, the friend of mine that was a psychiatrist that was my mentor, the most wonderful human being that I ever met in my life. He was a psychiatrist.
It's not Bob Case?
Well, he's the second one.
Second one. Okay. You're on the podium, Bob.
No, this was an ordained rabbi, probably the foremost authority in the world on addiction. Sorry he's passed away, but he was talking about the disease of addiction long before anybody ever thought about it. And this was back in the late 70s, and everybody was thinking still that it's a mental illness or a character flaw, and so on, everywhere. Well, I fortunately went and took psychology courses, different workshops, and so on, while I was pitching, trying to help myself. It had nothing to do with drinking. It had to do with trying to help me pitching on the mound and what have you. And I had 14 credits in psychology. And so when I went through recovery, and about my first or second year of recovery, he comes to me and he says, "Why don't you go back to baseball?" And I said, "To be honest with you, I don't want to take the chance of losing my recovery," which is true. Even though the year before I played in an old timers game in Jacksonville, Florida, and the scout for Kansas City was watching me warm up, and I was throwing 95, 96 then, when I hadn't picked up a ball for a year. And he says, "Did you ever think about going back to pitching?" He said, "I'd like to get you a job in AAA right now to see what you can do." And I told him no. I said, "I don't want to take the chance." And so I stayed out of that then. But my psychiatrist told me, "Why don't you start to become a counselor?" And I said, "No." I said, "Counselors don't make any money." I said, "I see all you guys working 24 hours a day and you don't make any money." I said, "I want to make some money." And he said, "Okay." He says, "Whenever you feel like it, let me know." Without even knowing it, he signs me up for a psychology class in Duquesne University. So I go for the class. Then he says, "Sam, we can't send you anywhere for a complete drug and alcohol program because they don't have any teaching the disease concept. But he said, with all the research that's coming out, you need to educate yourself so you could help other people, because people were starting to come to me asking for help, and I kept sending them to him. And he says, they're coming to you, Sam, not me. You need help.
Yeah.
So he started me going to different workshops. And over a 3-year period, I went to 40 workshops.
Wow.
These workshops lasted from 3 days to some that were 2 weeks long. And they were amazing. And also, that's where I learned and was certified for suicide prevention. That's what came in handy when Joe Garagiola called me about Barney Carbo in the middle of attempting suicide. He asked me if I knew how to handle it. I told him I did. And so I was able to talk to Bernie, talk him down, get him professional help. And today he's an ordained minister working with children in trouble. But that's only one of, we've had over 100 individuals in the 40 years that were either in suicide ideation or suicide actuation. And I went to those 40 deals, became licensed, and I get a call from Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball. And he says, Sam, we know you're in recovery. We know you went to school and you trained. We have a drug problem in baseball. Can you help us? And I said, yeah. He said, I'll draw you up a program. He said, okay. So it took me about a month because I was still trying to make a living selling insurance, and I had to work. So anyhow, I drew up the program. I sent it to him, and a week later, he calls me up and says, Sam, thank you, but no thank you. He said, it's too involved. And besides, you're addressing alcohol in addition to drugs. We don't have an alcohol problem in baseball.
Oh, boy.
That's what he said to me.
Yeah.
It's true. And the reason for that was baseball was making so much money from liquor and beer and what have you.
Right.
And they didn't want to address it. I knew it, but I had to be honest and come up with a program. So he said, thank you, no thank you. 3 weeks later, I get a call from the president of the Texas Rangers, Mike Stone. And Mike says, Sam, we want your program. And I'm trying to talk him out of it. I said, no, you don't. I said, I address alcohol. I address drugs.
Hold on, Sam, real quick. How did they know you had a program if you had just drawn it up with Bowie? Did Bowie go over it with all the rest of the club and the managers at the organizations?
Yeah.
Okay.
He sent it to all the general managers, or actually club presidents, and a few
and they
of them
shared it amongst themselves, right?
Pardon me?
I said, and then they shared it amongst themselves. So the Rangers or the Dodgers or the Orioles, they all said, let's look at this and see whether we want it. And they voted thumbs up or thumbs down. And Bowie said, no, we don't want it as a league-wide program.
Yeah, they all said they didn't want it, except Texas. Texas asked me for it. And I found that later on, the reason for it was the president of Texas Rangers, Mike Stone, his wife was a drug and alcohol counselor for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
She knew everything about the program and knew it would work.
Yep.
So anyhow, they hired me to do both. And I told them I do sports psychology and drug and alcohol abuse.
Gotcha.
And they said, we care, we want it. So I did that. And in baseball, the word spreads like anything. In fact, the CIA wishes they had a network like baseball does.
No kidding. Yeah.
After the third year, fourth year, I get a call from Texas general manager Tom Grieve, who said, the Toronto Blue Jays want to talk to you about your program. And we have already told them it's okay if they also get the program. So I became the counselor and the EAP for the Toronto Blue Jays. And back then I was divorced, so I was always traveling with either the Blue Jays or the Rangers, minor leagues, major leagues, minor leagues, major leagues, all over. And that's when in the middle of it, I get that call from Joe Garagiola about suicide. And then a year later, he tells me, Sam, you've got to work for the commissioner. You've got to have your program here. And of course, there was a new commissioner now. It was Peter Ueberroth. And I said, remember, the old commissioner said, no, they didn't need it. And he said, we need it desperately. So for 40 years, I was also the clinical director and for Major League Baseball's BAT program. And I'm still on the board of directors.
Amazing. I guess, they all follow each other's tails when it comes to, hey, if this is going to work for you and you're with the Giants and then the Royals put in a program, or in your case specifically, you've got the Rangers and then the Blue Jays end up winning the World Series while you're working for them back in the early 90s. Is that right?
Yep. I also received a letter from the president of the Blue Jays who thanked me and said that I was as much a part of the team winning the World Series as any player.
Wow.
Which made me feel fantastic. And by the way, the thing that I was most grateful for, I will say, in baseball, was that when Toronto Blue Jays called me up, they specifically stated that the players wanted me. And that's why they're calling. It's because the players were talking back and forth with each other, and they were talking about, especially the sports psychology program, how much that was helping individual players.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how great it was. And that's what demanded that Toronto call me to get the program over there, which I thought was amazing because it's very hard to sell a player anything.
That's what you had going for you. They looked up to you and they knew who you were. If I went and talked to them, they know when you're Sam McDowell, they're going to listen to you, and that's what you had going.
Well, I thank you, Bob. That may be some of it. I'm not sure it's all. But to me, the most important thing I think was that players in every sport, they want to take advantage of anything that will help them with their sport, with their position, with what. And now they're actually getting great vibes and great word about different players getting help and what it's doing for them. And the other players, they want it too.
Yep.
And I agree that in order to get in the door, yeah, it helped my background. But once I'm there, I got to give them something.
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine a lot of the conversations on the field, like I'm going to take an example, just a regular two-seam fastball. Pedro Martinez learned to do this with the ball. He just turned the ball, and he called it the Pedro, and it was basically his thumb was on this stitch right here, and it was high, middle, low, and the ball would move differently because, pitchers from all over other teams would get 10 seconds to visit with him while he's stretching over in the right field corner, and they go, hey, can you just show me how to throw this pitch? He goes, yeah, there you go. That's it. That's all you need to do. Is it also the same that, hey, Alvin, or hey, Sandy, how you doing? You're hitting 30 points higher than you were at this time last year. And I don't see you at the bar after the game at night anymore. Well, that's because of Sam. What's Sam doing for you? Well, if I'm hitting 30 points higher, or if my ERA is 60% percentage points lower, and Sam is responsible for that, wildfire, right? Is that something of what's going on? These guys are having conversations and they go, hey, I want him to help me because I do have a drinking problem, or I'm maybe smoking a little bit too much, or something's going on. Is that how some of the business of what you do, Sam, kind of took off?
Exactly. That's exactly what occurred, what happened. And interestingly enough, I never told an individual not to drink. I don't believe in it.
Okay.
I believe that there's a social aspect to drinking, and some people can do it. I couldn't. But I never told them not to drink. What I used to show them, not tell them, but have them feel it. Like when they're on the mound after having too much to drink the night before. I told them how the fear comes in, how the stability starts to weaken a little bit, how your concentration changes simply because of the booze you had the night before.
Yep.
How your self-conscious will wane a little bit. And I said, you do whatever you want. You want to drink? Do. Go ahead. But I said, this is what's happening to you. If you want to get rid of that, become a lot better player, try without it the night before and see. And that's how it worked.
And you knew from your own experience, Bob, being on Sam being on the mound as much as you were.
You keep forgetting I'm the good-looking one.
I'm so sorry. I really apologize. But
Sorry,
Sam,
Bob.
you've been through it personally, and then you learn how to do it the correct way, and now you're just giving these guys a choice. And then, it's up to you. I mean, you can do it without me, or you can do it with me and get a better life, one, and then a better athletic career. Keep it going longer. You're making great money. Who wouldn't want to keep doing that? Stop beating yourself up.
Well, in my case, drinking all the time, back then I never did realize what was going on with me. It was only through my education and training that afforded me the knowledge as to what it was. And now I can relay that to the players so that they don't have to go through what I had to go through, where they can prove it to themselves. I never once asked them to believe anything I said. And every time I had a seminar for all the players, I said, try it. See if it works. It's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do, and that's how it works.
But the evidence and the research and the facts all would give you reason to say, guess what? Sam's method does work, and it's a little bit better than what I've been doing because I don't know how to fix it, but I want to fix it, so I'm going to give it a try. Is that some of what the decision process includes?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Harper, if you don't believe in God, I want you to think about this.
All right.
My dad, I grew up as a little kid. My dad put me on his lap and said, never trust a man that doesn't drink. That was put in my head as a little kid, okay? Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
Okay. The guy that I hung around with and drank with as a full-blown drunk for years, we lived together as drunken brothers. We have been living together, for me, as sober brothers for 41 and a half years. And if God doesn't work in mysterious, it took this guy, who was the worst drunk I'd ever seen, to actually come to me. And if that isn't a miracle, if he could do it, I could do it. Do you understand? If this guy could do it and turn his life around, it gave me hope that I could do it. And he encouraged me from day one the whole time for 41 and a half years. I mean, if that isn't God working, I don't know what is. I mean, it's just, to me, if you don't believe in God, just look around, open your eyes,
Well,
and the interesting part about this is I'm on the East Coast, he's on the West Coast.
Yep.
We're doing this by mail and by phone.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, your connectivity is something that's very unique and special. You went through the tough times together, and that makes the easier ones. And it's funny you said what you did, Bob, and that, your dad's line was, you can't trust anyone that, you can't drink with. That's so absurd when you think about it. But yet, when you're with another guy and you're both protecting one another, if you're in the foxhole together and you've had a drink and you can still trust him anyways, I can kind of see where your dad is coming from with that type of an analogy. He didn't express it that way, but you got to really go in deeper. But the two of you have a connectivity because of the alcohol initially, and then because of everything but the alcohol, that is blood is thicker than water. It's just amazing.
Actually, what we need to think about is that in society, we seek out our level of self. By that, I mean, we hang around people that are just like ourselves. For instance, an alcoholic will always hang out with alcoholics. A sober individual will always hang out with sober people. An individual that's got drug problems will always hang out with druggies. A recovering person will always hang out with recovering if they really want real recovery.
Yeah.
That's right. Hey, Harper, even after 41 and a half years, people come up to, I go to parties and social events. They say, Bob, does it bother you if we drink like it's going to bother me? And you know what I tell them? I say, if I was impotent, I wouldn't tell you not to have sex.
You have a way with words, Bob, that I understand exactly what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. Sam, go ahead, Sam.
I got to get going.
Okay, real quick. We're at the final. You left. There were only two people in baseball that had a higher strikeout ratio than you. The guy on the left, Sandy Koufax and Nolan Ryan. You were way up there with those guys, right? And then in terms of total innings and everything else, Bob Feller was the greatest of the Indians. Most strikeouts in games was Bob Gibson. I mean, you were on a pedestal with some of the greats that were part of this game.
Harper, did you say this, Sam? I want to just tell them this before we cut off. 3 years ago, MLB named the best left-hander and right-hander. All 30 teams named the best right-hander and left-hander in franchise history.
Right.
The best right-hander for the Cleveland Indians, Bob Feller.
Bob Feller.
Who do you think was named the best left-hander?
Probably the guy in the middle of the screen right
Absolutely.
now. Absolutely.
One of the interesting facets of my career, which I'm very fortunate to have, is there's only 4 pitchers in the history of the game to ever average 9 or more strikeouts per game for a career.
Yep.
Can you name them?
I would say we've probably looked at 2 of them. Nolan, Sandy, you might be one, and maybe Randy Johnson.
Correct. All 4.
How about that?
Wow, Harper, this guy's a football guy, Sam. I love that.
He's pretty
good work. Harper, that impressed the hell out of me. That's terrific.
Yeah. Don't forget, he had a lot of head injuries.
Yeah. I can't. Don't ask me in 30 seconds what question you asked me. I won't be able to remember that. But thing I wanted to ask is, hey, if I want to know a little bit more about Sudden Sam and his story and some things that are baseball related and non-baseball related, but important in life, where would I go? Sam, is there a book or anything that you would recommend that I might be able to find?
Yeah, thank you. It's my book, The Saga of Sudden Sam. They can get it at Amazon for $24 or contact me directly for $45 for an autographed collector's edition.
Will it say, to my friend Bob, how much I love you, like you did to Bob? So I don't want you to do that in mine, okay? We promise you won't sign mine. Thanks, Bob, for all the great things that you've done. Will you? Hey, I'm teasing.
No,
how do people get?
I'll do that, but the price is now $75.
Dang it! I thought I would be able to get it away. All right, that's fair. Do me a favor. How would people get in touch with you? Is there an email address or something that you have from a business perspective to where people can reach out to you directly?
Yes, it's suddensam325@gmail.com.
325. Does that have any significance for you?
Yep. That's the number of strikeouts I had with Cleveland as the youngest left-hander ever to strike out 300 batters.
How about that? So it's not an area code, or it's not some secret sauce that you would have. The number of strikeouts, excellent. So suddensam325@gmail.com is where you can reach out. Sam will sign a book for you, and he'll charge you $75 and only $45 for you, our audience. Good deal.
And when we get off here, Bob will give you my address if they want to write me to get a book.
Okay, we'll take care of that as well. Bob, final thoughts before we go. I know Sam has an incredibly busy schedule and we've gone way too long, but your final thoughts of not only a friend, but a guy that has really been an impactful influence on your life.
Well, Harper, this almost 2 hours it's been like nothing. If there's anything better in life than friends, it's old friends. And Sam is probably my oldest, and he's definitely my dearest. He and Daryl are my 2 best friends in the world. So, I'm so honored and grateful to be with them. And as I've said before, how many times Harper, can you say the reason you're alive today is because somebody saved your life?
I can't count, and you have done it at least 3 times here today. So obviously his influence on you has been just an incredibly impactful.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So thank you, Sam. And Sam, I love you. And I'm not gay, but I wish I could give you a big kiss.
Well, thank you, big guy. I love it. I love you too.
I love
Take
you.
care, guys.
All right.
Nice
Thank
meeting
you so much. And to our audience here, a very special treat here. One of baseball's greats that has been a part of it. We appreciate Sam being a part of the show today. So on behalf of Bob, Bob, let me tell you what, the sports page is always a very unique experience, and it was here today. We appreciate you bringing Sam McDowell to be a part of the show. So we want to say thank you to all the folks that are viewing here today. We appreciate you being a part of 100 Yards of Football and for following the sports page with Bob Case. So for Bob, for Sam, myself, Harper LaBelle, we want to say have a fantastic